Week 6 is upon us. Tennessee travels to Arkansas. We'll get to the rest of the games in the SEC as well, but this is a curious one to me, John Miller of Locked On Mizzou, because on paper, Tennessee, much better football team. Yeah. Big road favorite. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the Bobby Petrino story. I don't know if it's how they played against Texas A&M last week, and maybe I'm overvaluing the Aggies a bit, but I like Tennessee. They look like a 10-2 shoe into the playoff right now. Worst case scenario. I'm not picking the upset. I do think Arkansas covers 13.5. I think this just gets uncomfortable. Late night game. It's one of those games where you're like, I don't know. Every team, every year, whether you make the playoff, miss the playoff, win the national championship or not, you look back and go, how was that game competitive? Sure. Why was that close? I think this is that spot for Tennessee. Arkansas has not given up hope on their season yet. The key for the Razorbacks will be whether they can run the football, because Taylon Green, not a high completion percentage guy. Can they run the ball on this stingy Vols defense? I think Tennessee goes into Fayetteville, wins. I'll take the cover, though, 31-21. Give me the Vols.
I think I'm with you on that completely. I think Arkansas covers as well, if only because, to me, the 13.5, I know it's in Fayetteville, but that's almost a suspiciously low line to me. Like, our friends over at FanDuel, since they put it under 2 touchdowns, they're just begging you to take Arkansas, aren't they? Or they're begging you to take Tennessee. Excuse me. They're going, whoa, come on, the Vols are number 4 in the country. They've basically steamrolled everybody. But our colleague Eric Kane, we just talked to him on the SEC Squad show that came out on Thursday. He was really worried about the Tennessee offensive tackle situation. So if you are thinking about taking a side on that, definitely look at that intel on game day, leading up to it, the last injury report, that kind of deal.
I'm also curious with the Vols. They've run the ball so well. They've had a balanced offense. When do they run into a team, or do they run into a team that takes away their ability to control the game on the ground and makes Nico be more than just a complimentary guy, who has been exceptional in that role so far this year, but he hasn't had a game like Hendon Hooker a couple of years ago where he's going for 300 to 400 yards through the air, where Tennessee can't run the ball and he has to throw it. If they run into a team, I'm just wondering, what does Nico look like in that scenario? I think that's the only question I have with Tennessee, because they've really impressed me to this point in the season.
I agree with you. They've been about as impressive as they could be. But, yeah, again, to your point, if somebody can take away the ground game, that is sort of the secret sauce of Josh Heupel's offense. If he can just get those quick hitters up the middle going, they're really, really hard to defend.
And they become lethal in play action as well. Of course, exactly. That's a sizable if, because Tennessee offensive line, question or two this week, they've been very, very good this year. Bama going to Vanderbilt. Again, I like the underdog to cover here. Bama, the big emotional win. This is the emotional letdown spot. They're favored by over 20 points. Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia, as you know, John, better not be a football team anybody overlooks. Absolutely. They're a much improved unit. I know they've only won 2 games this year, but one of those was against Virginia Tech. They weren't supposed to win that game. Right. I don't think this is a close game by the end of it. I'm just taking Bama to win 38-20 on the road. It's a big number to cover following that game against Georgia.
I totally agree with you. I'm glad that we disagreed on Missouri and Texas A&M because I agree with your take once again. I mean, basically, I think Kalen DeBoer is going to do great at Alabama, but this is the type of spot where you miss the cadre old Nick Saban, because when he's just frowning the entire week, despite the fact that you just had an incredible comeback victory against Alabama, you needed that frown. I mean, I'm telling you, in the past with Saban, this is exactly the spot where you go, oh, Alabama, they're going to have a letdown. Nope, they cover by 2 touchdowns anyway. I'm just going to say this isn't nothing against Kalen DeBoer. This is more respect for Nick Saban. So give me Vanderbilt plus 22.5 as well.
Yeah, but I'm definitely taking Alabama to win the game by double digits. I don't think it'll be anything close, when Vanderbilt went to Columbia.
Like a nail bite or anything.
Yeah. No, I don't think it'll be like when Vandy played Missouri or anything like that. See, I just kind of snuck that one in there.
Thank God we avoided that 2-point conversion off. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Thank you to the Vanderbilt kicker.
Yeah. Shout out to college kickers, ever unreliable. But speaking of unreliable, Ole Miss's offense last week Where did it go? They sent out a search party. I think they put it on a milk carton, John, because they don't know where it went. It has not been seen for several weeks at this point. By lieu of their last performance was a dud. I like Ole Miss in a bounce back here. This was my upset pick for Ole Miss coming into the season. I thought they would have a letdown game. It happened against Kentucky instead of South Carolina. I think they sharpened themselves back into focus after playing nobody for the first several weeks of the season. I think they realized, hey, we're not coasting through every game. This is SEC play. They're looking for their first conference win. Give me the Rebels to go in to South Carolina, win the football game, and cover the 9 points, according to our friends at FanDuel, 38-27. I like Lane Kiffin's team to get it done.
This might be the most interesting game on the slate to me. It really is. And a part of me wants to take the Gamecocks in the upset. I just don't think I can be quite that bold, but I also don't think I can give 9 points for Ole Miss on the road either. I was an Ole Miss backer and believer in the preseason, but I also have to admit to myself, it's possible they're just not quite as good as I thought that they were. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna hedge my bets and say Ole Miss pulls it out, but I don't think they're going to cover the 9 points.
It could get spicy. LSU would tell you it's not an easy place to play. Underrated home environment.
The Gamecocks started off with a kind of a shaky victory over Old Dominion. They've been pretty good since, with a close loss to LSU, like you said. So
how much better, by the way, does that blowout win at Kentucky look right about now?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Kentucky pushed Georgia down to the wire. Kentucky beat Ole Miss. I think South Carolina is a solid football team. I just think Ole Miss remembers who they are this week. Speaking of remembering who they are, Florida has completely forgotten what it is as a football program because it has been so very long since they have done anything relevant or exciting. They play UCF this week, John, and I am 0-2 picking Florida in big games. I thought they'd beat Mississippi State. They did. Whoop-de-doo. Congratulations to me for that incredible prediction. Who could have foreseen that Mississippi State would lose a conference football game? They might go 1-11 this year. I can't get behind Florida. Even though they're at home, they've been embarrassed twice. UCF got embarrassed last week. I think they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. This is a bigger game for UCF than it is for Florida. Knights 27-13 over the Gators.
I like the call. I'm with you. I think UCF, wins and covers as well. They're not the greatest team on God's green earth or anything like that, but they can at least run the football, and there's no real indication that Florida can stop the run. And again, just on the line, -2.5 UCF on the road. Your Johnny-come-latelys who don't pay that close of attention to college football are probably going, wait a second, aren't the Gators? That's Tim Tebow's team, right? We got to go with the Gators. But no, I think you got to go UCF here. I really do. I almost think Florida's getting maybe almost too much respect in this spot. By the way, Aggie fans, I did pick Texas A&M to beat Florida a couple of weeks ago, so you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll help them. Georgia-Auburn. To round out our Week 6 SEC picks, John, I think out of the gates, Georgia is going to run Auburn off the field, and then eventually Auburn will kind of make a comeback. Georgia will let up a little bit. I'll take another Auburn cover. I'm a big fan of the underdogs here. I won't be shocked if Georgia, has a get-right game and wins like 45-6 and just says, sure, Auburn, you're not any good, and Georgia, we are good. But I'm going 35-17. I think beyond the Alabama first half, Georgia has shown more cracks than I'd like to see in my preseason national championship pick. I still think that team is in there. They just haven't quite found it yet. And Auburn, as strange as it sounds, isn't that far off from being a good team. They're a ways away, but they're not.
They aren't. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where, of course, statistically, turnovers can be very noisy. But at a certain point, if you're just turning it over every week, you start to wonder, maybe it isn't so noisy. Maybe this is just who you are. But there is definitely, to your point, there is a recipe here for Auburn making this a surprisingly close football game. It seems like we see this fairly regularly from Auburn, where they'll, throw out a stinker against the Cal Bears and play Alabama down to the, down to the wire in the Iron Bowl, that kind of thing. So I can't say I have any confidence in Auburn here, but it's hard to have a ton of confidence in Georgia covering 22 points right now. So I guess I'll This is a stay away, folks. It's the ultimate stay away, is what I'm saying. But if you're going to make me pick, sure, give me the 22 points in Auburn.
Yeah, I wouldn't hand it out as a best bet in the SEC
No.
se, but again, if
you're betting on Auburn, it's time to hit 1-800-GAMBLER.net or whatever the heck it is. Like, seriously, like Auburn, just stop it. There's better picks out there.
I completely agree. John Miller, Locked On Mizzou. We agreed on a lot, but it was fun. Anyway, John, appreciate the time.
Appreciate you, man.